It's me, Dr. KSD. Welcome to my Purpose for Greatness podcast. This is episode number 2. I am so excited. We are doing the Surviving the Holidays series, and I'm so excited about this. I am because there are too many people who are going through these holidays depressed, grieved. They're not enjoying themselves. Matter of fact, didn't we say last week that 64% of the people were dreading the holidays? So today we are talking about managing expectations. This is a huge topic. Why? Because if you stop and think about it, it's our expectations of others that cause the most confusion in our lives. I mean, think about it. Think about any relationship and the last disagreement you had in that relationship. Was it not because one of you had unmet expectations? I mean, if you think about unmet expectations, it's probably the reason most people have broken relationships. So, we want to talk about managing those expectations because when you're able to properly manage the expectations you have of other people, then you have one of the most important tools you need really to survive the holidays. So if you think about it, these far-fetched expectations that we have of people very likely or inevitably is going to lead to you having some type of confrontation or some chaos or commotion during the holidays. But we don't want that to happen. We want the best holidays that we can have. Why do you think we expect the worst? Why do we have these far-fetched expectations? Well, there is a word, catastrophizing, that I want you to get. Catastrophizing is a medical disorder that causes people to have these negative assumptions that something bad will happen. Hallmark features of catastrophizing include anxiety and overthinking. Does that sound familiar? When I was looking this disorder up, I was kind of thinking to myself, girl, you have had some significant catastrophizing yourself throughout the years. It's not as bad as it used to be, but I have gone through these scenarios. I mean, think about it. You know what catastrophizing is? Catastrophizing is when you think of every bad scenario that can happen. I remember when I was in medical school and every test had been taken, everything had been done, all the papers had been signed. It was just time for graduation. And I remember sitting in my room thinking, is this really going to happen? I don't know if it's going to happen. Lord, I hope I don't get in an accident. I hope the building doesn't crash. It was the weirdest thing. And I tell you, coming up, your girl, I could make up some scenarios. Oh, I would have a whole movie going on in my head. So catastrophizing, this is when people just assume the negative is going to happen. And it's what makes people go to these family gatherings armed and ready for a confrontation. Hallmark features of catastrophizing, anxiety, and overthinking. So, most people who are overthinkers have a component of anxiety. Most people who are overthinkers are thinking of every scenario that could possibly happen. So, one thing that you need to know about me right now is thank you, Father God, I have been delivered. So, above all else, I am an idealist, but most people are not idealists. Now, since I lost my baby boy, I have come to understand and I've been made more aware of the fact that you have people who are idealists, you have people who are catastrophizers. But we have so many people who are grievers. And the sad part of this is that the majority of people who are grievers, they don't even know it. You see, statistics tell us that 10% of the people who grieve go into what we know as long-term grief. 90% don't go into the long-term grief, but there is this still underlying grief that lingers and affects every part of their lives. The 10% long-term grievers, these are the people who you know they are grieving. They are still looking just beat up and suffering, crying all the time. These are the people who are still having trouble greater than 6 months after they have suffered a loss, getting out of bed and going to work. And for some parents, even taking care of their kids. And so I came to the realization that there are many people who are catastrophizers who really are grievers. And I mean, for the most part, you can't tell. You can't tell because most of these people put on such a good facade. I mean, they put on Oscar nominee worthy performances. These are the people who fool you into believing that they are sitting on top of the world. And they do it so much that honestly, they have fooled themselves as well. I mean, they walk around with the big smiles. They give the appearance that they are happy and in a great place. But all the while, they're hurting inside. They feel defeated. They feel drained. They feel hopeless. And we know that without hope, people have a difficult time foreseeing a future. So we don't want anybody putting on a show for us, because it's those people who are in the greatest danger of never fulfilling their purpose, never living to their full potential, and never impacting the lives that they were created to impact. So, how do you know if you are a catastrophizer or not? Well, look at your life. Are you the person who is the star in some kind of drama? I mean, there's always a confrontation with somebody, and not the same body. I mean, different bodies. You go to store number one, there's an issue with the cashier. You go to the bank, there's an issue with the teller. You go to family functions, and you are always the star of the show of commotion. Or are you somebody who is unhappy with every arrangement that has been made? No matter how things are put together, no matter what is done, you're always unhappy with it, or you always have something to say about it. Or are you the person always criticizing the way somebody did something somewhere? If that's you, then very likely you are a catastrophizer. You call it standing up for yourself, refusing to let people walk all over you, not being pushed around. But I want you to stop and think about, how many confrontations have you had this week alone? Or better yet, how many confrontations have you had today alone? Now, what is the common denominator? Now, for those of you who've not heard me say this before, the common denominator is that thing that you find in every one of those scenarios. So if you find multiple confrontations and you are the star in every confrontation, honey, I'm sorry to tell you, you are probably a catastrophizer. So think about it like this. My feeling is we are who we are at our core. And our core consists of who we've been molded into from the time we were little kids up until this moment in time. Every single negatively impactful moment that we have had in our lives, it has molded us into who we are right now. Who we are at our core may not really be all that obvious to us. People who are just naturally happy inside, no matter whether they're sad, happy, depressed, defeated, people who are naturally happy inside, even when they feel they are at their worst, they are still wanting to make other people feel happy. People who are miserable inside, on the other hand, no matter what the scenario is, no matter how happy a place is, no matter what wonderful thing is going on, they are coming with the nastiness. Mm. She thinks she look good, huh? Look at her. I don't even like that hair. Where she got those clothes from? Think she looking good. I know it sounds familiar. I know it does because, it is what we are surrounded by every day. But the fact of the matter is this: you cannot be happy and spew out misery every chance you get. So if you are that person, no, that's not just how God made you. No, that's not just you standing up for yourself. This is you. This is your spirit crying out that your flesh is miserable and you need to get that flesh in check so that you can live the life that you were created to live. Matthew 15:18 says, out of the mouth flow the matters of the heart. The only thing that's going to come out of you is what's in your core. You cannot get orange juice from an apple. You cannot get apple juice from an orange. You cannot get happiness when there is just misery inside. You have to deal with the misery inside. And to this point, you don't see that you have an issue, but you cannot overcome the things that are holding you hostage if you don't acknowledge them. And you can't acknowledge them if you don't know that they're actually a problem. So let me give you an example. You've heard me talk about being in an abusive relationship when I was a teenager. So maybe 10 years ago, I ran into a classmate and we were just chatting up, just kind of catching up because I hadn't seen her in a long time. And out of nowhere, she brings up the abuser's name. I was a little taken aback, but I was quick on my feet and said, yeah, you know what? That was then. But girl, look at me now. Look at what God did. And when I said it, she immediately said, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean anything by it. But she did. But it didn't matter. I could have gotten mad. And to be honest, I was a little perturbed. But I was in a place where I knew that her bringing that up meant that she herself was going through something. It had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with her. And when you encounter people like that, you have to know that it's never a direct attack against you. The attack is really that person having to deal with how they feel about themselves. So, yeah, I stole her nerve when I said, girl, but look at me now. She was, let me take it back. Because most of the time when you call people out on their ish, you steal their nerve. But today, if it were to happen, I honestly would just look at her, and I would hope, knowing who I am now, I wouldn't even say a word and just think to myself, poor baby, how miserable must she be to want to bring me into her miserable space? Because the saying, misery loves company, it is a true statement. So, this is just one example of why people dread the holidays. Gathering with people, whether it's family, friends, or colleagues, being around people who are the epitome of misery and are constantly functioning in a miserable state and don't want to own it and pretend to be happy all the time. These are the people who suck the life out of you, because whether they know it or not, they bring misery with them like a stench everywhere they go. And for people who are grieving, being around those miserable people can make them feel worse than they already do. So, for those of you who are already suffering with grief because of the loss of a loved one or a loss of any important thing in your life that has left a lasting footprint on you, I want to give you some healthy tools to help you manage your expectation of these people. So, for every person out there who is already suffering with grief, or for those of you who are kind of dreading going to your family or friends or wherever for the holidays, I want to empower you with a few tools that you need to properly manage your expectations when you go and congregate with these people. Because in order for you to survive the holidays, you have to learn how to manage your expectations. If you think about it, the reason we're so frustrated with people during the holidays is because we expect us from them. And that's not fair. You see, we know what we would do. We know how we would talk to people, how we would act. We expect people to give us that same treatment, but they are not us and we are not them. But what we can do is we can be the light. The Bible tells us to be the light, to be the beacon, to be the salt. We're supposed to come and add flavor to every situation. When we walk into rooms, the atmosphere should change. And if it's a bad atmosphere, it should be a good one. If it's a good atmosphere, it should be a better one. If it's a great atmosphere, our presence should bring it up a whole nother notch. What we do need to learn is empathy. You see, it's easy for us to just, I wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have done that. But sometimes if we can just stop and put ourselves in other people's shoes, if we can just stop and think about what that person might be going through, we probably could change the whole atmosphere, definitely in spite of them, but maybe even for them. Because see, Matthew 7:2 says that with the same measure that we give to others, God will give to us. That verse for me, I mean, think about it. If somebody does something to us and we give them a little bit of forgiveness, can you imagine going to God asking for forgiveness for the plethora of sins we commit from day to day? And God kind of sending back a message, yeah, I'll forgive you this much. We don't want to give a little smidge of forgiveness and a smidge of grace and expect for Father God to give us tons and tons and tons. We have to give tons if we expect tons in return. So remember, Matthew 7:2, with the same measure that we give, God will give back to us. So give generously. So let's get started with those tools. Managing your expectations. Number one, communication is the key. Listen, don't be afraid to let anybody and everybody know you don't want to talk about certain things, or certain things are just not up for discussion. For people who are not grievers, what does that look like? You dreading going to the family gathering because you know they're going to ask why you're not married, or where's your girlfriend, or when are you going to have a baby, or what about them finances? For those who are grieved, that looks like people asking about the loss and, well, how you doing and how you getting by and what happened. Let's get something straight. You do not owe anybody an explanation about anything going on in your life. You have a right to have healthy boundaries. You have a right to not discuss the things that you think are not on the table for a discussion. So don't feel bad about not wanting to discuss those things. You can let them know ahead of time before we even get to the house. Let me let y'all know. We are not discussing this. We are not discussing that. For grievers, you can let them know ahead of time. I do not want to discuss certain aspects about my loss. And this is just for everybody. It is absolutely inappropriate for you at any point in time to ask someone what happened. Every time you ask a person who is grieving what happened, you are forcing them to relive those horrible events. Please don't do that. And why is it important anyway? When they're ready to share, they will share. So, tool number one is communication. Remember, don't talk about the things you do not want to talk about. That is your right. Tool number two, be honest about your financial difficulties. Family gatherings typically mean you ought to be bringing us something. First of all, if you can't, don't overextend your finances. Don't go putting yourself in debt trying to bring things that you know you are not able to afford. First of all, I just feel like if this is family, family will understand. Now, unless you are the person who never can bring anything and they see you wilding out all the time. So you can't be wilding out and then come to the family function with nothing. But for those of you who really have a financial need, your family will understand. And how about get something that doesn't cost a lot? Take on the paperware or something that is affordable and something that's not going to stress your pockets. So number one, communication. Number two, be honest about your finances. Number three, be okay with saying you're not okay. And this is especially for grievers. It is inevitable that somebody is going to say something inappropriate. Why? Because, for one thing, generation after generation, we've been passed down these horrible tools, things that we say to people who are grieving that are absolutely inappropriate. They are more harmful than helpful, but nobody has ever really said anything, so people keep saying them. So if somebody says something that is hurtful, it's okay to tell them that it made you feel bad. Be honest about how you feel about certain words and phrases. Excuse yourself if you need to. If you feel like it's getting to be too much, don't just sit there and let it build inside until you explode. We don't want you to explode. Maybe find a quiet place where you can just collect yourself. But when you get back in there, you owe it to yourself and your family to tell them that certain things, certain phrases are hurtful. It's also highly likely that a song will come on, maybe a TV show, something will happen that brings up memories of your loved one. That is inevitable. And that, honestly, it doesn't happen just at family gatherings. It can happen anywhere. This is the important thing for you to remember about this. You have a right to feel how you feel. Most people have difficulty with this because they want to put on this facade, like I talked about earlier. They want to put on the happy face when they don't feel happy. Don't pretend. Pretending only makes you feel worse for a longer period of time. You have a right to feel how you feel, and you should not hide that. Your grief, how you feel, if it makes somebody else feel uncomfortable, that's on them, not on you. And most people feel uncomfortable with grief because they themselves don't know how to deal with it. But that's not on you. It's not your responsibility to be worried about how someone else feels about grief. They need to deal with that on their own. You, you need to worry about you. You need to be able to express yourself. You need to be able to be true to yourself. If you are sad, hey, own it. If you need to cry, cry and get it out of your system, because until you own how you feel, you'll never be able to move on. All right? Remember this. Just because it didn't go the way you planned it, it doesn't mean it's a disaster. I mean, that saying, don't sweat the small stuff, it is real. It is so real. I have learned that however it turns out is just the way it was supposed to turn out. If something didn't get delivered, if somebody did not show up, I just learned to roll with it. You know why? Because what exactly does stressing and worrying and feeling bad about it do? I mean, yeah, you could go on and on and on about, oh, I can't believe they let me down. I can't believe they did it. Honestly, stressing about things does not make the thing that you want happen any faster. You have two things that you can do every single time something doesn't go the way you want it to go. Number one, you can do something about it. Or number two, you can accept it for what it is. Either one of those things will lead you to, some semblance of happiness and peace. But if you veer outside of that, if you decide I'm just going to stress about it and I'm just going to talk about it, and I'm just going to be mad about it, all you're doing is hurting yourself. That's it. So let it go. It is what it is. Don't sweat the small stuff. So we talked about communication, tool number one. We talked about being honest about your finances, number two. We talked about it's okay to say you are not okay, number three. Number four, be empathetic. Practice empathy. You may be tired of hearing the same person talk about the same thing over and over and over again. How about just being grateful it's not you, and being grateful that God gave you an ear to hear? Recognize at any moment in time, the same person that you're looking at with disgust, I mean, it could potentially be you. And sometimes it's hard to understand why people have this recurring thing in their lives. But put yourself in their shoes and try and be more understanding of why they're in that place. And again, you never know what their story is. Sometimes you do know the story, but sometimes it's not easy for people to just pull themselves out of the trenches. There's this song by Walter Hawkins that I love. It's called Thank You, and it says, it could have been me, no food, no clothes, outdoors, or just alone without a friend, or just another number with a tragic end. But you didn't see fit to let none of these things be. And every day by your power, you keep on blessing me. I am just grateful. I am grateful. And I have patience to sit and hear somebody's story. Why? Because I've had times in my life when I needed people to hear my story. So be empathetic and don't be so tired of hearing their story, because like I said, you just never know when it might be you. All right. Number five, we need to recognize the emotional age of the people that we are talking to. The cause of so many ongoing disputes and disagreements is because you think you're talking to the 50-year-old that you're standing in front of when you're really talking to the 13-year-old emotionally inside of that 50-year-old. You see, we get the chronological age and the emotional age mixed up. They are not the same at all. When you're talking to anybody, you have to recognize what their emotional age is. Then you can handle them accordingly. So if I know I'm talking to somebody who emotionally is only a little teenager or an adolescent, well, now I can handle them right. Because see, if I'm talking to a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old, I'm just like, okay, baby, look, if they can rant and rage and have a whole temper tantrum, I'm not going to get myself in a tizzy over a 10-year-old. So if you are emotionally 10 or emotionally a teenager, no, I'm not going to get myself in a tizzy. Recognize who you're talking to emotionally. Conversations will go a whole lot better when you do. Number 6, refuse to keep misery company. The saying that misery loves company is true, but you don't have to keep misery company. People who are in that miserable state, people who want to spew out nastiness, who want to bring chaos and confusion everywhere they go, you can make a decision that I'm not going there with you. I look at it like this. I'm here and the miserable people are down here. Do you think I'm going to leave my place of high standing where peace and happiness and joy are to come and play with these people down here? Heck no. And why should you? Make a decision for yourself to choose your peace, to choose to not keep misery company. Let them be in that miserable place by themselves. The only way they're going to have company is if you willingly leave here and go down here. Why anybody would choose to do that, I don't know. But now that you know, you can choose better for yourself. Last but certainly not least is the motto, the mantra, the thing that I probably say at least, I would say probably at least 50 times a day. Preserve your peace. You and you alone are responsible for the peace that you have within. You and you alone give people and words power to destroy the peace you have within. Don't let it happen. Preserve your peace. Protect your peace. You can make decisions that are good for you every single day of your life. I don't care if at every family gathering there erupts chaos and commotion all around you. The truth of the matter is, when you decide that you are going to choose your peace over everything else, baby, chaos, confusion, commotion can be just going on all around you. And you will be just sitting there, unfazed, unbothered, just doing you. Choose peace. Choose your peace. Choose to preserve your peace every day. Not just at family gatherings, but no matter where you are, remember, you only are affected by the actions and words of other people when you allow them to. Because every emotion that we have, emotions are choices. And people may not like to hear that, but it is. You choose whether to be happy or sad. You choose whether to be angry or let it go. You make a choice. The problem is, most of us come across the issue that we have been reared to fight back, to clap back, to tell somebody off. If they curse you out, curse them out. But at the end of the day, when you do all of that, what have you really accomplished? Because I promise you, somebody curses you right now. If you make the choice, you know what, whatever, baby, God bless you, and you walk away from it, you will still feel that, just that peace within. But the minute you clap back, the minute you go off and you tell them off, I promise you, an hour later, you're still going to be thinking about it. 2 hours later, still thinking about it. 5 hours later, I should have told her and I should have said, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Your peace is too precious to forfeit. Stop matching energies. Matter of fact, I have a shirt with that one. I'm going to have to wear that one next. I have a shirt that says, I will not be matching energies. My peace is too precious to forfeit. You know why? Because it is. We have been trained to clap back, but we need to reprogram our minds, and we need to choose us. Choose your peace. Choose to stay in that happy place and leave those miserable people right where they are. So listen, I hope these tools are helpful. I hope you are able to enjoy some time with your family. But above all else, if you feel like you can't handle it, if you feel like these tools are great tools, but I don't think I can master them by the time I go to my family's house for the holidays, choose to not go, because your peace is precious and you do not want to willingly put yourself in a place where you know somebody is going to rob you of your peace. But if you don't go, don't forget you have a spiritual family somewhere who loves you and accepts you just as you are. Go and take the time to be with them. So I thank you. Thank you so much. Episode number 2 is over and done. I appreciate all of you so much for hanging in there with me. So don't forget, share, share, share. By all means, watch it again. But please go to my YouTube page, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and share with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, whoever. Share on social media. Please help me get this word out, because I want to set the captives free. Because we were never meant to be in bondage. We were meant to live life with purpose, on purpose. You were never meant to be held hostage. You're never meant to be in prison. But baby, there is no lock on the prison door. Walk out, free yourself, and live life to the fullest, because you were created for a purpose. Jeremiah 1:5 says, before you were formed, I knew you. And before you were born, I set you apart. You were set apart to live a purposeful life. Live that life and live it to the fullest, because you were meant to live life with purpose, on purpose. Go out and be purposefully great. Peace.